Hi, welcome to Words versus Words with Friends. This is a fun, interactive podcast where we challenge your mind and perspective using everyday words and phrases. I'm your host, Jolene Santiago, and I have my co-host with me, Shamika Montgomery.
Hey, y'all. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We are so excited to have you here. Words versus Words with Friends is a podcast where we want to challenge you to create dialogue and to also think outside the box. Tonight's words are argument versus discussion. And if we could get those definitions. So discussion is the action or process of talking about something in order to reach a decision or to exchange ideas. An argument is an exchange of diverging or opposite views, typically a heated or angry one, to attempt to persuade or to determine the truth of a conclusion. So, Jolene, these two words are really good, especially to let everybody know what Words versus Words with Friends is about. Argument versus discussion. These are really good words. When I think of argument, I automatically think of emotion. I feel like a lot of times when you have an argument, you get very emotional and it becomes very heated. And a lot of times you get very angry.
You know what, Shamika? I want to have a discussion, but, I don't want it to get to the point where it does turn into an argument. I want to be able to respectfully listen to you and be able to have a conversation without, you getting upset or the person getting upset.
Yes, exactly. And that's the whole goal really of this show too, is we want to show you that you really can have a discussion. It doesn't have to be an argument. You don't have to get into it with anyone. You can go ahead and you can give them, sorry, y'all. You can go ahead and just be calm, and you don't have to get upset or get emotional, or try to tear the person down because your perspective or your opinion is different than the other person's.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's so true. We want to be able to honor the other person's opinions and perspective. Because a lot of the times, if somebody doesn't agree with your perspective or even just what you're thinking, your thoughts and even just your individuality, you as a person, and if they don't respect you as a person, then, your discussion can turn out very differently.
Yeah, that's very true. Because I think a lot of times when we think about discussion, the very first thing that I think about is you're open-minded. So you're open to hear what the other person's perspective is. For me, I feel like I'm more of a discussion type person. Anytime I feel like something is going to turn into an argument, I pretty much back away because I don't like confrontation. I like to discuss things. I like to hear other people's perspectives because I can learn so much from someone else. I like to remain teachable.
Mm-hmm. Hey guys, if you are joining in at Facebook or Spreaker, we invite you to comment. We want to hear your perspective. We want to hear your thoughts on the words argument and discussion. We want to know, having a conversation with somebody, and we were just talking about feelings, and when we think about feelings, are we really listening to the other person, or are we being clouded? Is our judgment and our discussion being clouded by our feelings? We may get upset, go ahead, Shamika. Mm-hmm.
I was just thinking because when you are in an argument, like I was saying before, it is very emotional. You do get very heated. And I think sometimes the reason why you can is because maybe you don't feel like you're being heard. You're trying to prove your point and you're trying to give examples of the reason why you feel a certain way. And sometimes you might feel like you're not being heard. And so it can turn into an argument instead of a discussion. I think sometimes when you're in a discussion, I think sometimes it can turn into an argument if you don't watch exactly what you're saying or how you're responding to the other person.
Mm-hmm. But what is the whole purpose of the discussion? Are we trying to solve a problem? Because now if you're getting into your feelings, then the problem's not going to be solved. And then so every time we have to deal with that situation, we never know how to handle it because it's never being resolved. So what is the whole purpose of the discussion? We seem to lose that clarity. What is the purpose? Why are we coming together? And why are we communicating? What is my point that I'm trying to get across to you? And so we tend to lose that, when we start to feel a certain way. And so maybe we feel like we're on the defense. And when we're on the defense, we're not willing to hear what anybody else has to say.
That's true. You automatically just shut down. You have a wall up. Maybe your feelings are hurt because of what someone has said to you. And so I do think that when you are having an argument, it can just turn left. And a lot of times something that you say or your tone can really just set the person off. It could just be you're having a discussion and then, it just gets heated and just automatically turns into an argument.
Mm-hmm. And I was just talking to somebody recently, about tone, but also about the person's personality, because a lot of the times, like, a person can be very sarcastic, and so when they come off and they say something that's very sarcastic, the other person takes it in a certain way, and so they take it as, "Hey, you're being rude to me right now," and it really isn't what they're trying to do. It's just, hey, they're a sarcastic person, and I think really just trying to understand their personality and just the way they are can help with the communication a whole lot better.
Yeah, I think that's true too. For me, I don't really do sarcasm because it's kind of hard for me too. So you're right. I think it really just depends on the person. Sometimes the way you say something or your tone, it can come off as being sarcastic, even if you really aren't meaning it that way. So I think it really just depends on the person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, definitely. Definitely. So yeah, just getting past the point. And I think that's kind of like where we're coming off, is getting past that point where we can put our feelings aside, because I look at it as being mature. Somebody has to walk away. When we get to that point where it's leading into an argument, somebody has to be mature enough to be able to walk away and say, hey, you know what? I feel that it's starting to go a certain way. I feel like it's getting a little negative. The tone is starting to change. If the tone starts to change, hey, you know what? We could possibly start to get into an argument. So I believe that, really just hearing and listen for those clues, or those, maybe it's a trigger that's happening and setting them off. So really just being mindful that when that tone changes, hey, let's go ahead and put this aside later. And maybe we can come back to it where we can both talk like an adults and really have a discussion.
Do you feel like there are certain things that trigger you that make you be on the defense and then it turns into an argument? Do you feel like there's certain things that people say or the way that they respond to you that can make you, on guard and it turns into an argument?
I think sometimes frustration sets in. I mean, if I'm going to be honest, it's just going around in circles. And when I see that something's not getting accomplished, I think is what could probably get me a little frustrated in having a discussion, because now I'm starting to get frustrated. So what am I going to do? I'm going to start to get a little upset. And so I'm going to, hey, at a point, maybe start to shut down a little bit.
Mm-hmm. That's good. So we do have a comment from Linda Joyce Hale. She says, how could you change an argument back into discussion? That is a really good question, Linda. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. So I think the way that you can turn an argument back into a discussion, maybe it's just in your body language. Maybe, your body language and how you're, responding to the person. Maybe it can go back into a discussion when you make that person feel like they're being heard. I think a lot of times it does depend on the tone of our voice. You know what I mean? Because I think when you're in an argument, it gets escalated, it gets heated, emotions are involved. And so I think if we just take a step back and kind of just change our tone, I think it can change back from an argument into a discussion, because the other person is feeling like they're being heard. The other person feels like their points are valid and that you're understanding where they're coming from. I think that's one way that we can change it back from argument to discussion.
Mm-hmm, definitely. Your attitude and how you handle it, really says a lot. Like I said, sometimes just taking a step back and analyzing, how did I handle this situation? And sometimes I always say acknowledging, when you acknowledge the other person's feelings, I think can change or shift the mood, and shift that tone. Because if I say, you know what, I understand that you're upset, and I understand that I made you frustrated, and I understand that I said something that I shouldn't have, and I'm sorry. So saying sorry goes a long way. I apologize goes a long way. So I think if you initiate and you're the first one to say, look, I'm sorry that I offended you. I'm sorry that I hurt your feelings. Can I help the other person calm down?
That is really true. Acknowledging how the other person feels, I think, is very important because they do feel validated. They do feel like they are being heard. So you're right. Acknowledging that and just kind of bringing the tone down just a little bit, taking the heat down just a little bit. A lot of times you have to step away. There are some people that when they get into an argument, they need time. Like if you have a couple and the husband comes home and he's frustrated from a hard day's work and his boss got on his nerves and, whatever else, sometimes he needs time to come home and kind of de-escalate and just decompress. So I think sometimes that can help too. I think each person, they kind of have their own way to calm themselves down. Some people need to go take a run. Some people need to go read a scripture. Some people need to take a drink of water. Some people need to take a nap. You know what I'm saying? Like, naps help. So, I mean, I'm just saying, there's different things that could turn it the other way and make it more positive, I think.
Mm-hmm. And your level of frustration. I would say don't get to the point where you get so frustrated or get to the point that you allow somebody to push your buttons to the point that, hey, now I'm not able to communicate. I'm not able to have a discussion. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I think you don't let a person get you to the point that you can't, where you disrespect yourself and you disrespect others is what I guess I'm trying to say, is that because when you come off as disrespectful, you know what I mean, then the person may come at you differently, or that just might leave something in their mind,
And you don't want to take yourself. Yeah, you don't want to take yourself out of character. That's exactly right. You know your limits and you know what you can take, and you also know what helps to calm yourself down. So yeah, you don't want to step out of character or, be something that you're not. So I do agree with you on that.
Definitely.
Hey y'all, it's time for a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back on Words versus Words with Friends. Hey y'all, thank you so much for tuning in. We really hope you're enjoying this episode. We would love for you to join us here on Facebook, YouTube, and Spreaker every Friday at 7:30 p.m. Central Standard Time.
We encourage you to participate in our live chat room and share your perspectives and ideas during the live show. Don't forget to go to next15podcast.com and tell us how we're doing. You can also catch up on future episodes of Words versus Words with Friends.
You can also check out past episodes of the Next 15 podcast show and Biblically Speaking podcast with Trey North. Thanks again for tuning in. Let's get back to the podcast. Welcome back to Words versus Words with Friends. If you're just tuning in, I'm your host, Shamika, and I have my co-host, Jolene, here with me. Tonight, we're talking about argument versus discussion. And before the commercial break, we were just talking about a question that Linda Hale asked: how can you turn an argument back into a discussion? And then we just got to talking about how the tone, your attitude, it can always turn that back into a discussion if you are having an argument, because the person is feeling heard and feeling validated in what they're saying.
Mm-hmm. And you know what, Shamika, we have to learn how to give people grace. We're not always going to have a perfect day. We're not always going to have a good day. And so when we extend that grace and be, compassionate, sympathetic, empathetic, towards others, and just even we have bad days ourselves, and be understanding, and when you and you let the person know, hey, I understand. Hey, are you okay? Are you having a bad day? That really goes a long way.
It really does, because you're letting the person know that you care about how they feel. You just never know what it is that they're struggling with, what they had to deal with that day. So even just asking, I think that can turn it back too, because they feel like, well, you care about me. You care about what's going on with me. I think that helps as well.
And you know what, Shamika? Boundaries, don't be afraid to have boundaries. That's something that I am learning myself, something that I'm working on, is that when a person does communicate with you and they cross those boundaries, to say, hey, it's okay, and then we're gonna have a conversation later about it. But I think that when boundaries are crossed, I think that disrespect can come in, and then that's where feelings can get hurt. You know what I'm saying? So it's so important to have those boundaries for yourself, and then also have boundaries for the other person as well.
That is good. It is good to have boundaries. Also, sorry, y'all. y'all help me out. Can somebody send me some comments or some questions or anything that we can discuss tonight? We would love to hear your feedback. We thank you so much for joining us. We are just excited to be here on our very first episode.
So, Shamika, one thing, when I think about, kids, and I think about children, when is it okay? When is it okay? Because I've seen parents allow their children to get into an argument with them. What are your thoughts about that? I mean, how do you feel about that as far as, are we giving our kids room for discussions, or are we allowing them to go ahead and have those arguments with us?
I feel like in today's society, there's not much discussion. I feel like there's not. I feel like there's more argument because people are so hostile, and and things are just going on. Even when you talk about kids, they're really going through a lot with COVID, with the pandemic. They're constantly going through changes. And I think a lot of the frustration because of the changes that are going on that they don't understand, they're doing work they're doing their schoolwork from home. They're going back to the school. They can't see their friends. And so I think a lot of times when the kids are frustrated, it comes out, in a negative way, and they don't know how to discuss issues. They don't know how to discuss how they're feeling. And so a lot of times it does turn into an argument, because not only is the child upset and frustrated, but then the parents could be upset and frustrated as well. So I think it turns into arguments, and they don't really have those skills and know how to discuss maybe.
We have another comment here. It says, what are some ways you set boundaries in your own life? Sometimes those boundaries are just walking away. Sometimes those boundaries are, hey, if a person starts to raise their tone, or if I feel disrespected, or if I feel like red flags are going off, I'm going to say, I'm sorry, can we finish this conversation later? Because I feel like it's going in a direction that I'm just not comfortable with.
And another boundary for me is the word no. We talked earlier before about the word no. It is an answer within itself. You don't have to explain anything. You have a right to choose yes or no. So I think even for me, because I do feel like sometimes I do have issues, I have worked on it with not having boundaries, because I want to say yes to everything and everybody. But I can't do that. I have to set boundaries for myself. And I have to know that if I say no, that's okay. I don't have to feel guilty about it, because I'm taking care of myself. I'm making sure that I'm good. I'm not being selfish. Self-care is not selfish. Saying no is not selfish. It is setting a boundary for yourself, and it's letting the other person know, hey, this is my boundary. I need you to respect it. Don't push me. Don't push me.
And another thing I learned too is, and I learned this years ago, actually at the job, everybody has their opinion. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. Your opinion is not the same opinion as mine. I think differently than you, and it's okay. It's okay for other people to give their opinion. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, you're right. It is. And I think for me, I kind of have an issue with that, because it's hard for me when we talked about earlier, when it comes to argument versus discussion. I'm more on the discussion side. It's very hard for me to argue with someone or even debate. It's very hard for me to do that, because I love to hear the other person's perspective. You know what I mean? I love to have discussion just like we're doing tonight. I love to interact with people and kind of hear their viewpoint because I just feel like I can always learn from the other person. You know, there's always something that they can teach me, just like vice versa. I can teach them as well.
There's nothing wrong with a debate, a healthy debate. There's nothing wrong with a healthy argument. I believe that there could be a healthy argument. I believe, Shamika, you said earlier about you believe that there aren't people aren't really having discussions. I think I want to disagree with that. I want to say there's plenty of opportunity for discussions. I just think we go about it the wrong way. I just think that the way we talk to people can be a whole lot better. I believe that there's plenty of discussions out there. It's just the way that we come at people,
Mm-hmm. And when you talk about discussion too, you really want to use your active listening skills. I think that when you're having a discussion, you're listening to what the other person is saying, and you're not trying to, hurry up and just think, okay, what am I going to say? I want to go next. You're waiting to hear what that other person has to say, and you are using your active listening skills. And they do feel like they're being heard when you do that.
And I think, Shamika, too, that arguments can be healthy because, I think that's a time of transparency. You get to see the other person for who they are. You get to see, hey, this person's upset. What did it look like when they cry? When they got like snot coming down their face and their eyes are red, and because let's be honest, we at one time or another have all gone through arguments, and I think just when you see somebody just pour out, and it doesn't matter, they can be upset, they could be angry, they could be frustrated, you know what I mean? That is showing the other person, hey, I have feelings, and I'm being transparent in this moment. Are you going to accept me for how I am and who I am, when I'm crying, when something's a little touchy for me, or I feel like, I'm a little sensitive right now at this moment, how are you going to handle it? Because I feel like if I get upset and you can't handle it, you know what I mean? That there could be a problem in that relationship. Something we might need to work on.
And I do want to thank everybody for your comments tonight, and we thank you for tuning in. We have another comment from Linda Joyce Hale. She says, I agree by active listening to others' thoughts, opinions, and feelings and not taking their point of view personally keeps the conversation in the discussion mode. Linda, you are exactly right. That is something that I have always struggled with, taking things personally. And my mom would always tell me, Shamika, be a duck, let it roll off your back. I would get so upset about just the smallest things. And I think it's because I always would take things personally. If somebody else, like you said, Jolene, has another perspective, that's fine. They can have their own view. It's not that they're going against you. They just see it a different way. And so even though I'm 42, that's something that I've had to learn over the years and tell myself, Shamika, don't take it personally. It's not about you. It could be 5 million other things that the person is going through. It could just be that they really are giving you their perspective because of the experiences that they've had in their life. So I think that is true. You can't take it personally. And I do think that when you are having a discussion or even an argument, really just going deeper, looking past all that emotion, and just really looking into the person to see what it is they're trying to say, what it is that they could be frustrated about, and they honestly may not have any type of active listening skills or discussion skills. Maybe all they know how to do is argue. Maybe they grew up in a household where there was just arguments. There was no room for a discussion. You were going to do this, and this, and we're not going to talk about it or discuss it. You're going to do it because I said so. And if not, it's going to be an argument and you're going to be in trouble. So I think a lot of times, too, we have to make that decision to try to develop those discussion skills because we need those even on our jobs, at our churches, at our schools, or we're dealing with other people. we have to know how to have discussions just like tonight. We have to know how to debate and argue. And I know, Jolene, you're going to help me with that because like I said before, I like to discuss. You know what I mean? So I know you're going to help me with that because it's very easy for me to be like, oh, yeah, girl, I know. Oh, you were so right. That's just how I am a lot of times. So,
Right.
so yeah, but I also need to know how to debate sometimes, improve my point, in a respectful, healthy way, which we will always do here on this podcast. So,
So Kristen has a comment. Is there a way to know during an argument if it's healthy or unhealthy? So, there are some people who are very passionate about their viewpoint, very passionate. They want to get their point across. And sometimes we mistaken that for feelings. We mistaken that for maybe them being too upset or them being angry. And that's not always the case. Sometimes we just feel very passionate about a topic or a situation, and we're really just trying to get that across to the other person. But I think that what makes an argument unhealthy is when you belittle the other person, when you're calling them names, you're putting them down, you're making them feel like what they say doesn't matter or who they are as a person. If you're attacking their character, that's not going to be a healthy discussion. That's not healthy at all. So really just putting that aside, because you don't want the other person to shut down. You don't. And so at that point, go ahead.
No, I totally agree with that. You don't want to tear the other person down. Like we said before, you have to have those healthy boundaries for yourself, and you have to know how far you can go and how much you can take for yourself. You know what I mean? You have to know for yourself what it is that looks unhealthy to you. Because if you think about it, something that's healthy to me may not be unhealthy to you because maybe you didn't experience it like that. So I think it really does depend on the person and their limits and what it is that they feel is harmful to them. And cutting them down and talking about them and making fun of them and ridiculing them. To me, that is very unhealthy because you're being very disrespectful. You're not showing respect of their opinion and how they feel or even their boundaries.
Having respect for yourself. Don't allow somebody to push your buttons. Don't allow somebody to get you to the point of that you are going to snap. Or you're going to get out of your character or get out of yourself. Don't allow somebody to take you there. And some people just can't walk away. Some people just can't, and you'll come across some people who will just keep pushing and pushing and pushing. But have boundaries for yourself. Have respect for yourself and that other person, because you do not want to lower your standards. You do not want to, you want to be the better person, the bigger person.
I agree with that. And Jolene, we thank you again for doing this show with me tonight. I really do appreciate you for taking this journey with me. We are going to wrap up for tonight's episode. We really appreciate your feedback, all of your questions. Jolene, do you have any last comments?
We just healthy discussions, we talked about discussions and arguments, and not letting anybody take you to a place where, you don't want to go yourself. So really just respecting the other person, just really being an ear, being open. You can be transparent, you can be open without having to get into your feelings, without having to be disrespectful to the other person.
We thank you again for joining us. You can follow us at Next 15 Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. You can go to next15podcast.com to listen to our other episodes. You can also listen to Words versus Words with Friends on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spreaker.com, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And you can also follow me on Instagram at Mika Lives. You can also find me on Facebook at Shamika Montgomery. We thank you again so much for joining us, and we will see you next week right here on Words versus Words with Friends.
You've been watching Words vs. Words with Friends podcast, brought to you by Next 15 Podcast Productions. If you would like to support the podcast, go to next15podcast.com and click the Buy Me Coffee tab, where we will receive your donations of any size. Thank you in advance and for watching the podcast. We will see you next week.